This is the story of how the ice cream you grew up eating quietly stopped being ice cream, and how the companies that made it counted on you never finding out. Right now, in your grocery store's freezer aisle, products are sitting in familiar cartons, carrying familiar brand names, priced exactly where you'd expect them to be, and every single one of them is legally prohibited from calling itself ice cream. They look like ice cream, sit right next to it on the shelf, even cost the same, but don't be fooled. The industry calls them frozen dairy dessert, and that distinction matters far more than the small print on the carton would have you believe. Today we are going to break down exactly what ice cream legally requires, which brands quietly swap their formulas, what they replaced your cream with, why they did it, and what it means for your body. Most people assume that anything frozen, creamy, and sweet qualifies as ice cream. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration does not see it that way. Under a federal regulation called 21 CFR, in Section 135-110, ice cream is a legally defined term with specific measurable requirements. Fail even one of them, and the product cannot carry that name. 3 requirements matter most. The first is milk fat. Any product calling itself ice cream must contain at least 10% milk fat, sourced exclusively from dairy, cream, butter, oil, or similar dairy ingredients. Swap in palm oil or coconut oil, and the 10% threshold no longer counts. The second requirement covers total milk solids, which must reach at least 20% by combining the milk fat with non-fat milk components like protein and lactose. The third requirement is the one that surprises most people. A finished gallon of ice cream must weigh at least 4.5 pounds. That weight floor exists specifically to cap how much air a manufacturer can pump in. The industry term for this aeration process is overrun. At 100% overrun, 1 gallon of ice cream mix expands into 2 gallons of finished product. Half of what fills that carton is air. The 4.5-pound rule is the FDA drawing a line. An FDA spokeswoman put it plainly to the New York Times in 2013. Ice cream requires specific levels of milk fat content, non-fat milk solids content, total solids in each gallon, and total weight in each gallon. None of that applies to frozen dairy dessert. There is no federal regulation defining what frozen dairy dessert must contain. No minimum milk fat, no dairy requirement, no weight floor. The only rule governing it is the one that says it cannot call itself ice cream. Beyond that, manufacturers can put in essentially whatever they want, and that is exactly what some of them have done. William A. Breyer started making ice cream by hand in Philadelphia in the year 1866. By 1882, he had opened his first retail shop. By 1914, the Breyer Ice Cream Company was producing 1 million gallons a year. But the volume was never what made Breyers legendary. What made it iconic was a promise. In 1908, Henry Breyer introduced what the company called the Pledge of Purity. The words were specific. I pledge that Breyers ice cream has never contained adulterants, gums, gelatins, powders or fillers, extracts or artificial flavoring of any nature. Real cream, granulated sugar, and pure flavorings are used to make Breyers ice cream. Gums, fillers, artificial flavoring. Those were the enemies, and Breyers named them by name. For decades, that pledge carried real weight with American consumers. Into the 1980s, the company ran television ads that openly mocked competitors for loading their products with unpronounceable ingredients, calling out carrageenan and guar gum by name, featuring children struggling to read rival ingredient labels. The message landed hard. Breyers was different. Breyers was honest. Breyers was real. Hold that image in your mind, because now I'm going to read you what's currently in Breyers cookies and cream. Milk, sugar, skim milk, wheat flour, cream, corn syrup, palm oil, and then less than 2% of whey, Dutch cocoa, natural flavor, mono and diglycerides, cocoa, soy lecithin, salt, baking soda, guar gum, carob bean gum, Terra gum, and vitamin A palmitate. Gear gum, palm oil, corn syrup, mono and diglycerides. Every ingredient the Pledge of Purity named as the enemy now appears in Breyers' own product. Getting from 1908 to that ingredient list required ownership changes that stripped the brand of everything William Breyer built. The family sold to the National Dairy Products Corporation in 1926. Kraft acquired it later, then sold the brand in 1993 to Unilever, a multinational conglomerate owning hundreds of consumer brands worldwide. By 1995, Unilever had closed the last Breyers plant in Philadelphia. The company that started on a Philadelphia street corner had become a line item in a global portfolio. And then, somewhere between 2011 and 2013, something changed on supermarket shelves. No announcement went out. No press release landed in anyone's inbox. The cartons kept the same design. The flavors kept the same names. The prices held steady. The only change was a few words on the front of the container, where it used to say ice cream and now said frozen dairy dessert. On January 21, 2013, a consumer watchdog site called Mouseprint, run by Edgar Dworsky, published the first widely circulated account of what Breyers had done. Dworsky documented the specific flavors that had been converted. butter pecan, cookies and cream, chocolate chip cookie dough, Rocky Road, and the extra creamy vanilla and chocolate varieties, among others. 3 months later, on April 17th of 2013, Dan Barry covered the story in the New York Times. That's when the wider public started paying attention. Barry tracked down Nick Soukas, Unilever's brand building director for U.S. ice cream at the time. Soukas arrived with an explanation ready. His words to the Times: "People really drove that decision. People are telling us we want a smoother texture. A smoother texture." That was the official reason for pulling cream out of the formula, replacing it with corn syrup and palm oil, and adding a full roster of gums and emulsifiers. Barry noted something conspicuous in his column. Soukas, he wrote, did not mention the possibility that using less dairy fat is cheaper. Breyers elaborated in statements to other outlets, saying the frozen dairy dessert varieties were blended in a whole new way to create a smoother texture. And then came a line worth reading slowly. The suggested retail price for frozen dairy dessert varieties will be consistent with the current ice cream products. Same price, cheaper ingredients. That is the complete business model, stated plainly by the company itself. The ingredient comparison tells the story faster than any summary could. Breyers Natural Vanilla Ice Cream carries 6 ingredients: milk, cream, sugar, skim milk, Terra gum, natural flavor. Cream sits in second position, ranking behind only milk by weight. Now look at Breyers Extra Creamy Vanilla Frozen Dairy Dessert. It runs past 12 ingredients: skim milk, cane sugar, cream, corn syrup, and then less than 2% of whey, mono and diglycerides. Guar gum, carabine gum, Terra gum, natural flavor, annatto for color, and vitamin A palmitate. Cream has fallen from second place to 4th. It now sits behind skim milk, cane sugar, and corn syrup. There is less cream in that container than there is added sugar syrup. The nutrition label shifts accordingly. Less total fat and less saturated fat appear because less dairy fat is the entire point, but more added sugars and more sodium fill the gap, and the protein content drops right alongside the cream. The product gets hollowed out nutritionally and then propped back up with stabilizers and sweeteners. Now let's talk about those vegetable oil substitutes, because this is where it gets important for older Americans. Palm oil, coconut oil, and cottonseed oil behave differently in the body than milk fat does. Professor H.D. Goff at the University of Guelph, one of the leading food scientists in ice cream research, has been direct on this point. His words: "Duplicating the structure with other sources of fat is difficult." The structure he's describing is the way milk fat triglycerides maintain a combination of liquid and crystalline fat at body temperature, which is what gives real ice cream its characteristic feel and flavor. Vegetable fats produce a lighter texture and greater air incorporation. High-melting triglycerides found in some vegetable oils can generate what food scientists specifically describe as a waxy, greasy mouthfeel. That slightly filmy sensation some people notice in cheaper frozen products is the vegetable fat responding to body temperature in a way that cream never would. A 2018 peer-reviewed study confirmed that ice creams made with 100% milk fat scored highest in taste and flavor testing. The authors concluded that oils and the combination of milk fat with other vegetable oils largely affected the flavor. Then come the synthetic emulsifiers, mono and diglycerides, soy lecithin, polysorbate 80. These enter the formula to create a stable blend between fat and water when there is not enough real dairy fat to do that work on its own. Haagen-Dazs accomplishes the same result with egg yolks, a natural emulsifier with no synthetic additives required. And the stabilizer gums, including guar gum, carabine gum, and carrageenan, slow melting and create the appearance of creaminess without the fat that would normally produce it. These are the precise ingredients Breyers named in its 1908 Pledge of Purity. They now appear in Breyers' own products. For older Americans, the concern is not any single serving. The concern is the pattern. Highly processed ingredients replacing whole dairy ingredients in products many people have eaten for decades, without ever realizing the formula underneath the familiar carton had changed entirely. Corn syrup where there used to be cane sugar, palm oil where there used to be cream, 12 ingredients where there used to be 6. Same carton, same brand, same price, different product. Breyers pointed to texture. Turkey Hill, another brand selling frozen dairy desserts, offered a more straightforward answer. In a statement to CBS Pittsburgh, Turkey Hill acknowledged that frozen dairy dessert is used, in their exact words, to keep production costs in line. That is the only honest framing of what happened across this industry. Corey Geiger, lead dairy economist at CoBank, made the economics explicit in 2025. His words: "When butter was fetching north of $3 per pound the past 3 years, a number of ice cream makers pulled out dairy cream from their ice cream and added food gums and air to mimic real ice cream. $3 per pound for butterfat. Palm oil trades at a fraction of that. Vegetable oil suppliers can also lock in long-term fixed-price contracts. And that financial predictability is something the dairy market, which rises and falls with farm conditions and seasonal supply, simply cannot match. And then there is the air itself, which functions as a free ingredient. At 100% overrun, 1 gallon of mix becomes 2 gallons of finished product. Half of what goes into the carton costs the manufacturer nothing at all. Frozen dairy desserts, exempt from the 4.5-pound weight minimum, have even more room to push that ratio further. A simple test makes this visible at home. Pick up a pint of Häagen-Dazs and a pint of a budget frozen dairy dessert in the same size container. The Häagen-Dazs will be noticeably heavier. That weight difference is cream versus air and stabilizers. Breyers confirmed openly that frozen dairy dessert carries the same retail price as their ice cream products. Every dollar saved from the cheaper formula goes to the manufacturer. None of it goes back to you. Once you know what the label looks like, you start finding it across the entire freezer aisle. Breyers and Edy's, the same brands sold under different names, east and west of the Mississippi, now describe their products on their own FAQ page as frozen dairy dessert. Their classic vanilla flavor is listed as frozen dairy dessert at major grocery chains. A former Breyers employee reported that standard vanilla carried 16% butterfat before Nestlé acquired the brand in 2002. After the acquisition, that figure dropped to 10%, the bare legal minimum for real ice cream. More recently, coconut oil has surfaced as a dairy fat substitute in some Breyers formulations. The brand now sits under Froneri, a joint venture between Nestlé and a private equity firm. Blue Bunny, headquartered in Iowa, made the switch almost entirely after the Ferrero Group acquired its parent company Wells Enterprises in 2022. Mouseprint documented the change in February of 2024. By that point, a single variety, vanilla bean, was the only one still reportedly labeled as ice cream. Friendly's, a brand carrying decades of nostalgic weight for many Americans, sells products under both labels on the same shelf. Some are marked premium ice cream, others are marked frozen dairy dessert. The distinction is easy to miss when you are reaching into the freezer without looking closely. Klondike's original vanilla variety remains ice cream, but some of the other varieties are frozen dairy dessert. Oreo entered the frozen category in 2022 and labels every product as frozen dairy dessert. Kit Kat frozen cones are frozen dairy dessert as well. On the other side of that divide, Ben & Jerry's, Häagen-Dazs, Bluebell, and Tillamook have held the line on real ice cream. Tillamook is one of the few brands explicitly marketing against frozen dairy desserts as a selling point. These brands cost more. They cost more because cream costs more than palm oil. The freezer aisle has split into two tiers: brands that maintain the dairy standard and charge accordingly, and brands that quietly cut the dairy content while keeping the price exactly the same. In June of 2024, a class action lawsuit landed in the Supreme Court of New York State, naming Conopco Inc. and Unilever United States, the companies behind Breyers, as defendants. The allegation was that Breyers' natural vanilla labeling implied the vanilla flavor came entirely from vanilla plants, when the product actually contained vanilla flavors derived from other sources. The settlement came in at $8.85 million. Class members could claim $1 per purchased product, up to $8 without a receipt, covering purchases made between April 21st of 2016 and August 14th of 2024. As part of the agreement, Breyers was required to develop a new formula within 12 months. The case was about flavor labeling, not the frozen dairy dessert designation directly, but the pattern it reinforced was hard to miss. A brand whose founding promise centered entirely on ingredient honesty, repeatedly having to answer in court for what is actually in its products. The United States is not the only country wrestling with this question, and the way different governments handled it is telling. Australia and New Zealand set a minimum of 10% milk fat from dairy sources, matching the US standard. Canada holds the same 10% floor, though in 2005 the country repealed a law that had specifically banned vegetable fats from frozen desserts, opening the door to substitutes that had previously been prohibited. India took a harder line. The country's Food Safety Authority ruled that only products containing genuine dairy milk fat can carry the ice cream label, and anything made with vegetable oils must be called a frozen dessert. That ruling triggered a legal fight between Amul, India's famous dairy cooperative, and Hindustan Unilever, which markets products under the Quality Walls brand there. The Bombay High Court got involved, because the label mattered enough to fight over. The European Union went the other direction entirely. No binding compositional standard for ice cream exists across the bloc. Vegetable fats are fully permitted. A product containing zero dairy fat can legally carry the ice cream name in much of Europe. After 2015, the United Kingdom went further still, with no legally binding compositional requirement at all, and a voluntary minimum of just 5% fat from any source. Palm oil ice cream is entirely legal under the ice cream label in British stores. Here is the irony worth sitting with. American law requires a company to put frozen dairy dessert on the label when the product does not qualify as ice cream. British law permits a company to print ice cream on the label even when no dairy exists in the product at all. The problem in the United States is not that the labeling law is weak. The problem is that the label change was designed to be invisible to anyone not specifically hunting for it. After years of paying the same price for a reformulated product, the most useful thing you can do is learn to read the carton correctly. The words ice cream or frozen dairy dessert are required to appear on the front of the container, typically in small text directly below the flavor name. On Breyers products, that designation can be easy to miss, but the law requires it to be there. From there, read the ingredient list. In real ice cream, cream should appear near the top, first or second by weight. When skim milk, corn syrup, and multiple additives appear before cream does, that is a reformulated product. Palm oil, cottonseed oil, or coconut oil appearing in a standard dairy context are vegetable fat substitutes standing in for cream. A physical check works too. Pick up 2 same-size containers and compare their weight. Super premium ice cream with low overrun is noticeably heavier than a budget frozen dairy dessert, and that weight difference represents real ingredients versus stabilizers and pumped-in air. Brands consistently labeled as actual ice cream include Ben & Jerry's, Haagen-Dazs, Blue Bell, Tillamook, and Costco's Kirkland Signature. They are priced higher because cream costs more than palm oil. When 2 same-size containers carry the same retail price and one is ice cream, while the other is frozen dairy dessert, the manufacturer of the frozen dairy dessert is pocketing the difference between what they charged and what they actually put in the carton. That money is not going back to you. The companies making these changes assumed most shoppers would never look closely enough to notice. They were wrong. In March of 2012, one of the first consumer complaints appeared on a blog called My Sister's Pantry. A reader left a comment that captured what thousands of others would eventually feel. I have been a loyal Breyers fan for at least 30 years. Absolutely refused to buy anything else. That is, until today. I feel so betrayed. It's like the death of an old friend. The death of an old friend. That is not language people use about products they consider interchangeable. In July of 2014, a woman in Cincinnati named Christy Watson posted a video showing a Walmart Great Value ice cream sandwich sitting in the sun for over an hour without melting. The post reached more than 1 million people on Facebook. Local news stations picked it up. The Washington Post covered it. The story went national because people could not believe what they were seeing. By May of 2024, a Facebook post claiming Breyers was now 50% air had generated 35,000 shares. Snopes had to step in and fact-check it. In December of 2025, a viral couple video showed 2 people discovering their Breyers carton said frozen dairy dessert, asking out loud if anyone knew what had happened to the brand. One reviewer on homemadehints.com put it memorably, "When the cat actually refused to lick the ice cream bowl, we knew something was wrong." The companies were counting on you not noticing. Thousands of people noticed anyway. They just noticed too late, after the reformulation was already complete and sitting in freezers nationwide. In 1908, Henry Breyer put his name on a public promise. No adulterants, no gums, no fillers, no artificial flavoring. Real cream, granulated sugar, and pure flavorings. That pledge held for decades. Into the 1980s, the brand was still confident enough to run national television ads calling out competitors by name for using the exact ingredients it had sworn off. Then ownership passed to Kraft, then to Unilever. And somewhere between 2011 and 2013, the formulas changed without announcement. Corn syrup appeared where cane sugar had been, palm oil appeared where cream had been, guar gum, carabine gum, and carrageenan appeared, the precise ingredients those television ads had held up for ridicule. The pledge of purity disappeared from marketing materials and was replaced by a reworded ingredient pledge, carrying asterisks. The carton kept its design. The price held steady. The only visible change was a few words in small print on the front panel, where ice cream had become frozen dairy dessert. Federal regulations required that honesty. The product could not legally carry the ice cream name, so the company placed the accurate name there, in small text, and trusted that most shoppers would not look closely enough to notice. Now you know to look. The next time you reach into that freezer aisle, find the front panel, locate the product designation, and read it. Those words are not incidental. They are the company telling you exactly what it thinks of what it is selling you and exactly how much attention it expects you to be paying. Some brands still honor what that designation means. Now you know to look. If this video changed the way you look at your freezer aisle, that is exactly what this channel is built for. The corporate back door is where companies make the changes they hope you will never notice, and we are here to open it. Hit the like button if you are going to read labels differently from now on. Subscribe if you want to know what else they have quietly reformulated while keeping the same packaging and the same price. And drop a comment telling us which brand surprised you most or which product you want us to investigate next. Corporations count on you not paying attention. We are paying attention for you. More videos coming soon on the changes they made while you were not looking.